What happens if you don't care for yourself? What happens to your body? What's inflammation? And then my favorite of all time, how to care for yourself.
Dr. Maryam Zeineddin is a physician, the founder of Zili CARE,
and a change maker.
I think one of the reasons I started to really look at the concept of self-care was because of the immense level of burnout I was seeing, not only in my patients, but in myself.
So the struggles that many people can relate to is it's easier just to keep going until things totally break down.
Your mental and physical health is one. So we're not going to separate.
See, that's a pause right there.
I hug my patients. I cry with my patients.
Yeah.
I swear with my patients. And they think I'm human.
Yeah.
And I'm just myself. And people connect with that more.
That's mindfulness right there. I just want to quickly thank you for beginning to watch this podcast episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do so. Would love it if you join our community. You'll also be up to date on the latest content, and this really helps me reach out to more guests. You can also visit our website, centerformindfulness.ca. There's free events about mindfulness and laughter. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am so excited to share this conversation with Dr. Maryam Zeineddin, a physician and founder of ZilliCare, a non-for-profit platform established in 2017 that empowers women to navigate the medical system, offering evidence-based tools to transform our approach to mental, physical, and emotional health. She has played a pivotal role in negotiating a groundbreaking longitudinal family physician payment model. Would love to talk about that too. Adopted by 70% of BC family physicians in Canada, revitalizing family practice and improving patient care. As a co-founder of Al-Mashat Medical Center in West Vancouver, she leads a team of 8 physicians caring for over 10,000 patients while actively mentoring students. She contributed to the establishment of the Coastal Family Practice Residency Program and is also president-elect of BC Family Doctors. As a regular commentator on CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, she advocates for healthier lives, communities, addressing resiliency, mental health, and gender equity. Join us as we explore these topics and dive into ways for enhancing well-being and her fascinating journey. So, Dr. Maryam, warm welcome to you to the Pause to Elevate podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I have to tell you, while preparing for this, I was thinking about the first time we met, which was just last week. And I was left with, you truly are such a shooting star that keeps on giving. Truly, like this, the energy of service and care and making a difference. So thank you for time. Like you're pretty busy. So thank you for creating time to connect here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kasim, for all the work that you do and for creating this podcast for people. And and I love the way you even opened the conversation by saying we're just here to give service with love for your listeners. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And I wonder the love you have for service. What led you first, if we go back to your journey to becoming a physician, and just what led you to this love for well-being and resilience? How did it all start?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I recently did a leadership course where really in leadership, you have to really get to know yourself and get to understand why you do what you do. And they always do a emotional intelligence testing to see sort of where you're at in various elements of your emotional intelligence. And one of the sort of biggest things was my level of social responsibility was extremely high, and which actually can be a problem because ideally, in this sort of the realm of emotional intelligence, all elements need to be kind of very very same. So your self-awareness, the way you take care of yourself, the way you're attuned with empathy with others, it doesn't matter what you score, but they all have to align around the same. And what one element of social responsibility was kind of off the grid
Off
for
of the
me.
charts.
And the teacher in that course said, "Oh, you really need to look at that." So I did a lot of digging. I have great mentors around me, and one of them happens to be the great Gabor Mate. So I go to him and I say, "Oh, like my level of social responsibility is just so high. Like, they said to me, like, I really need to look into this because apparently people that have a very high level of social responsibility, uh, compared to everything else, they tend to burn out
Yeah.
very quickly." And interestingly enough, he said, "Well, probably that's what's worth to you. That's attached to your worthiness." And it's true. Since I was a child, I was a child of war during the Iran-Iraq War.
Yeah.
And being at school, I watched my own father. My father was one of the directors of the massive Red Crescent, which is equivalent to Red Cross in Iran. And so
Wow.
during the war, he was the one that would, mobilize 10,000 volunteers and, find blankets for areas that were being bombed. And it was always very busy, very, very busy. And so if I had to say something that needed his attention, it had to be something quite significant or
Oh, wow.
something so I would have to grow up really quickly. And for him, even throughout our childhood, the conversation around the dinner table was what's happening in the world. How can we serve the world? And it was very much part of how we all grew up in my family.
Wow.
Uh, and even to this day, it's that sort of culture still seeps, and you have to do your best. You have to be at your best in order to serve others. So I've had to really unpack that a lot around my own worthiness, and that I can be worthy no matter how much I serve or don't serve. And so it's been quite a journey. And I think one of the reasons I started to really look at the concept of self-care and ZilliCare, hence the platform,
Yeah.
was because of the immense level of burnout I was seeing, not only in my patients, but in myself.
So what are early roots where you began learning it's not about just being self-centered on just our needs? And here you are growing at a time of war. So this was in the 80s and the Iraq-Iran war, and learning and your father's role and his work, and really learning we have to think about others. And while we have our own needs, but how can we serve others? So really the roots began earlier on for you in a difficult time.
Yeah. Yeah. And also
Mhm.
almost too early, I think, in all fairness. Although I think my parents did the best they could. So I have forgiven them for putting so much pressure on their children. But yeah, it was very, very sort of tough times in terms of how we had
Mm.
to collectively be there for one another.
Mm.
Because I remember I lived in a house that was the only house on the street that had a underground sort of basement. So
Oh.
every time there was bombing, and we
Mm.
lived in Tehran, so every time there was bombing in the capital, all our neighbors would come to our basement.
Oh. So there's a huge thing about the social connection and social support. It's interesting you say that. My research and my MA and PhD were both on trauma and war trauma. And one of the things that really I found fascinating is coping through social support. This, what's referred to at times as social suffering, like suffering together. So we're
Yeah.
suffering about being together, and kind of learn it's not just about what I need, what I want. We need each other to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it was actually quite lovely. And then,
Mm,
and I had that social surroundings where I knew my neighbors, and I would play with the kids on the street. And then
mm,
we actually moved in the middle of the war to Europe. So we lived in
mm.
Greece, and then we lived in England,
Oh,
and then we
wow.
lived in Sweden. And Sweden was quite a secular sort of culture. It's not the
Mm,
same. It's not as it's got so many good things to it, um, and I learned a lot from that culture. But it just didn't have that social identity, and I was
mm.
actually seen as the odd sort of dark-haired girl amongst
Oh.
all these Swedish cute
Mm.
blonde kids. So just, really understanding what it feels like to really look different
Oh.
and come from a completely different culture as a child was very eye opening, and I think
Mm,
it gave a lot of growth to what I do now with my own patients.
mm. So the struggles that many people can relate to is, not belonging, being different, not fitting in. And here you are earlier on in life, traveling so many countries, and just, identity, the whole thing of identity, like who am I as we travel through different places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're way more similar than we think we are
Mm,
anywhere we go. And I've realized of all the places that I've been to, I mean, we're not that different from any Swedish person, really. They have the same struggles, similar issues. It's just that it's sometimes nice to be able to connect. And actually, when I moved to Canada,
mm,
I moved to Canada for university. I automatically was very gravitated towards the Persian community because I
mm.
hadn't seen Persians. I didn't,
Yeah.
as a kid,
Mm,
really, I left Iran when I was 7, 8 years old. So,
mm,
I joined their Persian club.
mhm,
I think it still very much so exists at UBC,
mhm,
and it was kind of a form of an identity that we
mm.
sort of created together, and we're still all very good friends with all the Persians. But for me, I like that diversity with friendships
Mm.
from all walks of life. Um, and I think it's really good for your health and well-being and your growth to really be
Yeah,
able to sort of expand your horizons aside from your own culture. But there is something comforting about that too.
it is. It's something familiar. It can feel like home, right? Something very similar. But it's also there's richness, as you're saying, as we meet other people from different background and cultures. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, with friendships, and that's a whole topic, it's hard to find a friend that can fulfill all our needs. Like,
Oh, I agree.
right?
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
so
Yeah.
you diversified from earlier on.
Yeah.
Friendships, yeah.
Yeah.
And how did that so lead to medicine and this interest in not just fixing people, but actually in their well-being and enhancing their life? So how did you go into
Yeah. I
this
think,
medicine first?
yeah, I was always a fairly responsible kid.
Mm,
I was the oldest child of three and three daughters. And so it was it was a very natural role for me to be a care provider.
mm,
Because that was my role in my
yeah.
family as well. My two sisters are considerably younger than me. They were 7 and 11 years younger than me. So I was like the little mini second mommy.
Mm,
And we were an immigrant family in various countries, and my mother really did need help. And and my father worked full time. So, uh, I knew, and I was very, very studious, very responsible. I was sort of a quote unquote the good girl,
Mm.
and uh, and I really enjoyed the sciences. Like I really actually loved physiology and anatomy,
Mm.
and I wasn't very into biology particularly, but I wanted to be some form of healthcare provider, and for me, I went into sciences at UBC, and then sort of branched to physiology and then to medicine, and it came quite naturally to me, really, to be really
Mm.
honest with you, and but I didn't know what I didn't know back then.
Mm.
So I didn't realize the limitations of medicine. And the way we were taught was very interesting. Now, in hindsight, I'm looking at it. We're having our 30-year medical school reunion. No, actually, no, not 30-year. Oh, gosh, no, 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 don't say that, Mariam. No, we are having our 21st year university.
Mm.
We missed our 20 years. So it's actually my high school 30-year reunion
Yes.
in Sweden, which I can't attend. But
Mm.
then there's also a 21-year reunion for medical school.
Mm.
And I realized that we do a lot of band-aid medicine in the conventional world. And
Mm.
we've kind of segregated everything. If there's something wrong with your skin, you go to the dermatologist. If something's wrong with your gastric, you go to gastroenterologist. You go to the heart
Mm.
specialist. You go to the cardiologist.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting now. The more I practice medicine, the more I realize how ridiculous that is, actually. How really
Disjointed.
it's so disjointed, and none of the
Mm.
specialists talk to really with one another. And I think that's one of the reasons I love being a family doctor, because
Mm.
family medicine really has a role to play in
Mhm.
being that specialist in primary care,
Mm.
uh, and being that advocate for the patient and a guiding voice in terms of how to help navigate
Mm.
this really complex system.
Yeah.
I mean, and so by 2017, I can tell you, uh, family medicine was just going downhill
Mm.
very quickly. We were not being compensated. We were all burnt out.
Mm.
Um, and it was very like, okay, the more patients you see, the more money you make.
Yeah.
Or
Factory style, just
yeah,
more
very
people.
factory
Yeah.
style, very like, okay, what's your one problem? And off you go. And it's so counterintuitive in how I would like to practice medicine. So I had this internal struggle on, I want to have more time with my patients. And if any of my patients hear this, they were like, well, yeah, that's why we had to wait for her for sometimes an hour, because I would fall behind. I
Mm.
couldn't see this factory style level of medicine.
Mm.
And at some point, the business aspect of things really didn't make sense, because
Yeah.
we can't set our own fees. Like what kind
That's
of
right.
business owner can't set their own fees?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yes. In British
So,
Columbia here in Canada. Yeah.
well, it's just
Yeah.
it just doesn't really mesh, unless there is a system that really supports that kind of
Yeah.
level of care. So, by 2017, I wasn't really sure if we could change the system. So I was like, you know what? Let's bring it to the patients. Let's give them the tools and
Mm.
insights they need in order to take care of themselves.
Mm.
Because what if they don't have a family doctor? What if
Right.
they don't have a family doctor who believes that there's more to it than the conventional world of medicine?
Mm.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of us in the conventional world of medicine that are a little bit scared of what's outside the world of conventional.
Mm. Like complementary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't really they don't they don't see the healing powers of some certain individuals in the
Mm.
allied healthcare profession that they can have, and
Mm.
all of them. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter if you're a psychologist, chiropractor, traditional Chinese medicine doctor,
Ah.
homeopath. Like, I'm telling you, I would never say to my patients, no, no, don't go to that, or
Mm.
don't go to this. I mean, in a way, my patients go to all sorts of sort of alternative medicine, and then they end up sort of coming and saying, "This is what we found out.
Mhm.
You know, where do you think, or what is your opinion in terms of where I can go with this?" And I always say, well, if it doesn't harm you, there's no reason why you shouldn't try it.
Right. So exploring. So it's not becoming just like a gatekeeper, but actually supporting someone in making sense of their own journey too. They might be
Yeah.
reaching for, yeah.
Yeah. And especially with my patients that have chronic pain, they've gone to every
Mm.
specialist, and it's just not like they're not
Yeah.
getting what their needs are. They're not feeling heard.
Mm.
But you have to also understand the allied healthcare providers that are out there. They're all private, so you kind of
Mm.
have to pay out of pocket to see all
Mm.
these individuals. They will give you their time because you're paying for their time.
Yeah.
And us family doctors, the system was so limited for us.
Mm.
We couldn't even do proactive care because there is no such a thing as proactive care
Mm.
in a band-aid world of medicine. So, because we didn't have time, we didn't have time
Mm.
to discuss that with our patients.
Ah. So what would proactive care look like for those who are not familiar with it? What would that mean?
Yeah, so in Zili CARE,
Mm.
we started a platform, and it was like a local success story here in Vancouver, mainly geared towards women. I mean, it was
Mm.
really sort of our biggest patient cohort were women, sort of in their late 30s to 70s, like when things really starting to
Mm.
where they really need help, and they're carrying a big load at home, at
Mm.
work, caring for their elderly parents, and they're really the neck of the family, and they're juggling multiple balls, and they think
Mm.
that's they're supposed to be also well and healthy while juggling all these balls.
Mhm.
So the expectations are high of women in this society. Uh, and so we've had, and we would invite local specialists or allied healthcare providers to come and
Mm.
give their insights on how you can care for yourself. What happens
Ah.
if you don't care for yourself? What happens to your body? What's inflammation? Nobody
Mm.
talks about all these illnesses are really inflammatory.
Yeah.
And what does chronic level of stress do to turn
Mm.
on those inflammatory markers? And then what does those inflammatory markers do to turn on your bad genes?
Mm.
So there's a lot you can take ownership for yourself. The key is it's not just an individual thing, it's also a cultural thing, it's a societal thing, and
Mm.
it's really creating a shift in even the corporate world, really.
Yeah.
The way we barely give any women any maternity leave, or
Yeah.
we expect certain things for rehabilitation and recovery, and I mean, the list goes on. So yeah, so we created ZilliCare, and then we created a formula, and the
Mm.
formula was an acronym for CARE, like
Yeah.
CARE. And the C was calming the mind, although I'm sure you, as the expert in
Mm.
mindfulness, you don't necessarily have to calm the mind. It's just
Mm.
more finding a way to not let your thoughts take over all the time.
Right. Right. So
Right?
being at peace with how it is. It could be calm or it could be stirred up, but being at peace with how it is. Yeah.
Exactly. And really understanding how important that C component, that the calming the
Mm.
mind, be it formal, informal way of meditating, or finding a way to find mindfulness in your life, uh, really turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that calms things down. Where, so you're not in this constant flight or fight or freeze mode, which is okay, which serves us when we're in danger. But it's just, if that nervous system, called the sympathetic nervous system, is constantly on fire, you are going to get ill.
Yeah.
Your inflammation's going to go sky high. You're going to get autoimmune disease. You may get diabetes. You may get cardiovascular disease. In fact, depression is an inflammatory illness.
I was just going to say that, actually.
Cancer is has an inflammatory component to it. And we always, I had patients, I used to always see my patients that recently been diagnosed with cancer. And they were like, but I don't understand. I exercise, I eat healthy. And I, and it's not to blame the patient at all.
Right.
But it's this notion that prevention and proactiveness is not just exercise and eating healthy.
We need it, but not enough.
We need it, but there's a whole nother component to how you care for yourself as well that we really hadn't tapped into for a while. I mean, now mindfulness has become a sort of a bread and butter of conversation, but we really didn't have that even 10 years ago. I mean, we did, but it wasn't really talked about very much.
Yeah. It's almost this disconnect between mind and body, right? Like, let's just fix the body as a machine. Something's broken in it. But the role that our mind, in terms of how we think, how we're viewing the world, how we're viewing ourselves, how we're working with stress, how we're living our day, like there's the perspective we're holding. There's so many things that affect the stressors in our life.
Yeah. I mean, we, unfortunately, in the conventional world of medicine, what we do is, if you come with any symptoms to me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rule out all the physical stuff first before I even consider talking about your mental health.
Yeah.
Which is very unfortunate, actually. And I don't do that anymore because I have the bravery not to do that. And I am very clear with my patients that your mental and physical health is one. So we're not going to separate it. So, we also need to break that stigma that comes with mental health and mental fitness. If anything, mental health illnesses have already a stigma. I'm not crazy. Well, it can't be my mental health. Are you sure it's not my thyroid? I mean,
because it's something broken. There's a stigma of perhaps something labeled.
Patients are happy to take a thyroid medication. But if I say, well, your thyroid is fine, I think your fatigue really comes from the fact that your mind is exhausted. Your emotional health and your mental health is suffering because of the situation that you're in, or now chronically your sympathetic nervous system is firing and it's actually giving you physical symptoms. So the C, we've really pushed for the calming the mind. The A in the CARE formula is activating the body. So, really the exercise component and what that means to you. So really moderate sort of cardiovascular exercise for 150 minutes a week doesn't necessarily mean that you do it all in one time. You can
just get it done, but throughout the week. Yeah,
you could even, do something with a brisk walk, 20 minutes a day, and you've got that checked off.
A couple of days a week, done.
Yeah. And literally that will probably check off your A, and it will check off your C because it calms your mind. Because you're actively present when you're walking and you're looking around and you're tapping into your senses. And then the R in the CARE formula is reinforcing your body. So really understanding. I mean, with particularly with the younger generation, we talk a lot about what screens do to your mind. So really being conscientious about how many times you pick up your phone. When do you put your phone away at night? Where do you charge it at night? So we really sort of actively work with youth and even adults. I mean, even adults don't realize what that phone is doing for you in terms of deteriorating your attention span. You're deteriorating any dopamine that your brain has because you're just feeding it that quick dopamine, and then it just gets depleted. So, and then the R has a multiple other elements. It's got the diet in there. It's got if you're, taking vitamins and medication, how your sleep is based on the screens. And then my favorite of all time, how to care for yourself, is the E in the CARE formula, which is engaging your soul. So what does that mean to you? Like if I asked you, like, okay, so Kazim, you really need to really tap into the E for yourself. Like, what would you do to engage your soul?
When you ask that, what comes up is something that's heartfelt, that makes me feel good. It might be going on a hike. It might be listening to something, reading something that really nourishes the heart. That's the first thing that comes up as you say that.
Yeah. So exactly. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of things that engages the soul can be something active that you do, can be just being out in the nature and feeling connected and having that awe, that you're kind of coming out of yourself and you're not just in your head trying to solve your own problems. When you go and look out in the ocean, the awe of the ocean really takes you away from your own problems because you're like, I am so small compared to that. Really. So that's the one that's sort of the going into that awe and doing things that fill you, the fill the soul or your essence. And then there's also like what brings you joy, the service is engaging your soul.
Volunteering,
creating service, doing community work, or doing your work that has so much purpose in it. That doesn't feel like it's work, and then the other thing that really engages your soul is really being present to what you can be grateful for. What are the elements of gratitude? And we're not talking toxic positivity here.
Right.
I'm really not a very positive person. I mean, I try
to imagine.
Well, no, I try to be, but I'm definitely, I have to actively make sure that my cup is half full rather than half empty.
Yeah. So it's a choice you're nurturing.
I have to be able to really, it's almost like I have to do this mental exercise so I can see the gratefulness in every situation, and really hold space for the various emotions that the situation brings as well.
See, that makes sense. Growing up in war, and then afterwards, your career, here you are working with patients, right?
Yeah.
And they're not coming to see you to tell you good news mostly, right? It's like, here's the problem.
Yeah.
So day in and day out, working with, here's what's wrong, here's the problem, here's what's wrong. And so choosing to nurture positivity, not toxic. I love how you said that, because toxic positivity is really toxic when we try to cover emotions, like, oh, everything's great, I'm feeling great, no, will work out. Well, I don't know if it will, but
no, I know. It's very I've realized, especially as time has gone by in family practice. In family practice, one of the beauties of being a family physician is that you're dealing with patients from cradle to grave.
Yeah.
So I used to deliver babies for the first 10 years of my career. And then I transitioned to doing end of life care.
Oh.
And, uh, and it was actually quite difficult for me to transition from giving birth to attending to the dying. And my
Mm.
patients would beg me, please, you need to do the palliative care. And I'd be like, but why? Like, there was a palliative care doctor right here, and I'm
Yeah.
not really good with death and dying. And they're like, but my mom really wants you as her doctor there. And I would be like, okay. And I would attend to their needs and do the palliative care and be there for the family, but
Mm.
it would exhaust me, and
Mm.
it would take a piece of me. And then I realized that, oh, interesting. I have a trigger with grief in
Mm.
particular. So I had a caregiver as a child who died when I was 7, and I was
Mm.
not told she died.
Oh.
So it was kept from me. It was kept from me for a couple of years, and I kept wondering where she is. And then
Mm.
by the time I, 2, 3 years later it went by, they were like, "Oh yeah, she died, and she
Oh.
cancer."
So it's like a kept secret.
It was a kept secret, and it was
Mm.
very interesting because they thought as a child you can't deal with grief, and
Mm.
they don't, it's a cultural thing, I think,
Yeah.
and just kind of shoving it away. Oh yeah, she died. Here you go, and so there was no.
Mm.
There was nobody really explained to me um, what happened these 3 years, how much she suffered,
Oh.
where was she buried. And finally, as an adult, I actually went and I grieved her as an adult.
Oh.
When I was finally in medical school, I begged my university to um, give me the opportunity to do an elective in Tehran.
Mm.
And they did.
Wow. They did?
They did. Yes,
Wow, you made it happen.
I made it happen, and I went for a month as a medical student, as a
Mm.
Canadian medical student, to Tehran at the
What an
University of
experience.
Tehran.
What was that like?
Oh, it was amazing. So good.
Mm.
So wonderful and so heartwarming. I don't think patients were prepared uh, to see a doctor that was compassionate, number one, because it's
Mm.
very authoritative there, the way
Mm.
the physicians deal with their patients. They're very, very paternalistic, very like, this is
Mm.
what you need to do, and make
No
sure you see your.
questioning. No questioning. Yeah, yeah.
No. And they were just not used to, our kind of Canadian way of being, where I was
Mm.
like, well, what do you think? And they were like, well,
What if I'm allowed to think? What?
yeah, and the kindness, I think, that was shown to them, uh, they just didn't feel like they were second class citizens.
Mm.
And a lot of patients in Iran feel like they're second class
Oh,
citizens, and they're coming to the doctor, and the doctor is just like,
yeah.
and most of the time, like I don't know, in Canada we don't, yeah, I have this allergic reaction to anybody that sort of thinks they're better just
Mm.
because
Oh,
uh,
because of whatever position or whatever
whatever education
title,
they have. Yeah,
education. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. So I
It's
think
like a shielding, right? It becomes something
it is.
we people use to hide behind.
Well, and it's very sort of ego driven, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and I realized the doctors, particularly, they're supposed to act a certain way. They're supposed to
Mm.
sound a certain way. They're supposed to. I mean, I was taught in medical school, really, do not hug a patient.
Oh.
You can touch a patient on their shoulder, then that's it. And I was like, no, like that's not who I am. I don't care what you say, UBC.
Yeah, yeah.
I hug my patients.
Mm.
I cry with my patients.
Yeah,
I swear with my patients.
yeah,
And they think I'm human.
yeah.
And I'm just myself.
Mm.
And people connect with that more. And they
Mm.
say, do not share any intricate details of your life
Mm,
with any patient. Well,
mm,
I'm sorry.
mm.
Okay, I understand. I'm not going to be talking about myself when my patient is coming
Right.
to see me about their problem. But if I can gain therapeutic alliance with my patient,
Mm,
where the patient is feels that they're being alienated for what they're suffering from,
mm.
if I say, you know what, I have experienced the lower back pain that you've had. It is
Yeah.
the worst experience. It is the worst pain because you think it's not going to go away. Right.
Mm.
And they say, yeah. And so technically, I have shared,
Yeah.
had chronic lower back pain.
Yeah. But you see, it's from a place of deep compassion and connection. Like as you're sharing, like as you're speaking it, it's not about you just turning the attention on you. It's
No.
about deep, like your expression of understanding. Like, oh, like I've had something similar, and
Yeah.
this really sucks. Like there's a being understood again, which you named earlier. Many people
Yeah.
don't feel understood. People don't
Well, and this
understand
is
them.
the thing.
Yeah.
You can't do things, you can't teach things that black and white in
Mm,
medicine or any other profession, really. You can't say you are not allowed to do this and you are not allowed to say
yeah.
that. And I was told from a I remember I was interviewing a patient as a medical student, and the patient had cancer,
Mm,
and the patient started crying, and I'm a very sensitive soul,
mm.
so as a medical student, and I was also a medical student,
Yeah.
and so I started, I had tears in my eyes too,
Mm.
but I still continued, conducted the interview. I held space for the patient,
Yes. But you were touched by it. Like, yeah.
but I got dinged because I cried.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, and the teacher made an example of me in front of everybody and said,
Oh,
all of you need to understand the difference between empathy and sympathy. And I was like, wow,
wow.
this is,
That's where disconnect happens, right?
yeah, yeah.
Disconnect. As you're sharing this, there's something about in the mindfulness practices and
Hmm.
compassion. We begin to see like someone else is really just like me.
Yeah,
They are just like me. There isn't this huge separateness. We don't have to agree with someone. We don't have to necessarily like them, but there's like, wow, they're just like me too. Like they got yearnings, they got hopes, they got fears, and right now they're hurting, like just like me. I've experienced hurt. Like there
yeah,
isn't this like lesser being out there.
yeah. No, and
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest teachings that I've gained, um, is that in order for me to have compassion for my patients,
Mm,
I have to learn how to have compassion for myself.
yeah.
So, going back to our conversation about that social responsibility kind of
Mm,
being high,
yeah.
well, yes, sure, it's high, but I'm not going to be able to be of service if I don't know how to care for myself enough and be
Mm,
compassionate enough to myself in order to be the physician that I want to be. And I
mm,
can tell you, Kasim, I'm able to hold space so much better for my patients in 2024 compared to before 2017, from
mm,
even 5 years ago. Uh, I can listen, I can actively listen better. I'm not
mm,
jumping to solve their problem right away. I let them sit in their pain, and it's okay for them to
mm,
sit in their pain. Whereas
mm.
before, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you're crying," and I'd feel bad for them. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, "Oh, this is great. This is so good. You're sitting in your emotions."
Yes.
And then they start giggling and they say, "Oh, I only cry when I sit with you."
Yeah. But what a bond. You see, that's
Yeah,
a bond that heals, right? Like a bond where people can just
yeah,
be
yeah.
truly.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to say it's such a privilege to be to
Mm,
be of service to your patients, of any caliber. It brings so much, not only purpose, but so much joy to have that connection with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I have this extended family. Many of them.
10,000 of them.
Yeah. No, the 10,000 are all not my patients.
Yes.
Maybe at a tenth of them are my patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see, all of this as you're sharing your story, you could have stayed in the silo of just seeing patients and not even looking up to see what's happening in your life, what's happening with yourself, how you can grow as a human being, and just expand. Like you've gone outside of just seeing patients. You've gone outside of just treating patients. You've taken care of yourself and really expanded, created a platform for healing as well, which is really quite incredible. Like it takes like a pause, and which is really the name of this podcast, right? Pause to elevate. So so I
Thank you.
wonder, right? So I wonder, what would you say have been some of the key pauses in your life that have elevated things? It could be moments or times like, you
Yeah.
know what, I took a pause and that ended up elevating things.
Yeah. So it's in a way ironic that I tend to pause mostly when I'm in the depth of my pain.
Mm,
I pause when I'm in awe, but it doesn't change anything for me.
mm,
But pain is what brings change for me. And
mm,
I've explained this to my patients as well, is I do see pain as a messenger. So anytime you have any form of pain, be it emotional pain, physical pain, uh, it's an alarm telling you something. So
mm,
listen to it. And the less you listen to it, the pain's going to stay there. It's going to become chronic.
mm,
It's not going to leave you because it needs your attention.
mm,
And at some point, I was like, I need to leave family practice. I'm getting burnt out. The system's not sustainable. We're losing family doctors left, right, and center.
mm,
And the sheer pain of having to say goodbye to my patients and leaving them without a family
mm.
doctor. Because it's not like I could find a replacement. Like it
Right.
was just like what kind of almost ignited me and was a catalyst for me to
Mm,
join leadership
mm,
and, be around very sort of like-minded individuals that wanted change.
mm,
And we really went for the momentum the time was giving us to create change. And it was
mm.
incredible. I mean, I was at the legislator in 2019. No, actually, it was 2020.
Wow.
It was during COVID. And we were at the legislator crying, saying everybody deserves a family doctor.
Mm.
And literally within a couple of months of media being on our side, our patients being on our
Wow.
side, grassroots doctors being on our side, other associations being on our side, we ended up creating a negotiation table just for family practice.
Oh.
And there was 5 family physicians who sat there across from the deputy ministers for many, many, many hours,
Wow.
days and months. And with the help of very phenomenal individuals,
Mm.
we were able to create a completely new payment model for how I would love to see my patients. So now I actually get paid for my time. I get
Mm.
paid for the encounter, and I get paid for the complexity the patient comes to me.
That's a
And
change in paradigm.
it's a huge change.
Mm.
And so now the pressure is, there's less pressure to see so many
Mm.
patients, although I still see very many patients because there's still an issue with access. There's just not enough of us out there.
Mm.
But it's a beginning of change. You know?
Mm.
And that was kind of my pause. My pause
Mm.
was, oh, okay, I can't sustain this. I'm going to
Mm.
pause and I'm going to figure out what am I going to do with this pain that I'm having.
Mm. See, this is actually not easy to do because it's easier just to keep going, and
Yeah.
many people keep going until they're totally burned out.
Yeah.
Like actually pausing, whether it's a complete pause of stepping back, or hours or days or weeks or months, whatever it is, like it could be seconds. Like, wait, I need to think about this. It gives us some perspective because we're so in the grind culture. You got to keep going. You got to keep pushing, and don't give up. Keep going. Push harder. Push more. Yeah, but like, what is the rock that you're pushing? Like sometimes we have to pause and go, what is that rock I'm pushing up the hill? What
Yeah.
hill am I going up on anyway? Do I need to be pushing this hill? But that's something that you've done, and pausing actually. Like, wait a minute,
Well,
what?
I mean, I
Yeah,
wasn't great at pausing, I can tell you. I even
yeah,
tried to take a sabbatical,
mm,
uh, and then COVID hit right
yeah.
when I was about to take a sabbatical.
Oh,
And I was like, oh no, okay, well, now I have to go back because it's
yeah.
COVID and, the office needs me and the patients, and patients were very anxious and we were all very anxious. So, but I did decrease my hours quite a bit, and I
Mm,
and I communicated with my patients a lot.
mm,
Like, I'm not feeling well. I need to decrease my hours to figure out what my next
yeah.
move is. And then the next letter was, I'm going into leadership. I'm still going to be working part-time. I have a part-time locum. Let's see what change we can make.
Yeah. But see, that takes courage. That takes courage to
Yeah,
actually
it
pause.
does.
It's easier just to keep going until things totally break down. And that's what
Yeah.
most people do. And it's interesting. I had Mick Krasner and Dr. Ron Epstein on the
Oh,
podcast
excellent.
as well, and just talking
Yeah.
about mindfulness in practice in medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is so important. Like physicians bringing in mindfulness to their own lives so they can actually take care of themselves. Caring for ourselves as we care for others is
Yeah.
really important. I also had another physician, Dr. Mark Sherman, speak about that, like the
Oh,
importance of
yes.
caring for ourselves.
Yeah. No,
Right?
I know him very well, and
Yeah,
he's spoken at our platform as well,
yeah,
at one of the ZilliCare conferences, and he brought a very sort of easy tool, the 5 4 3 2 1 rule. What are the
yes,
5 things you see? What are the 4 things you hear? And I
yeah,
was telling him, well, Mark, I started meditating in 2019. Again, at a point where I was like, okay, there's pain here, there's healing needed.
yeah.
I was in the depth of therapy with compassion inquiry practitioners,
Mm,
and I was taking a compassion inquiry 1-year course,
yeah.
that is put together by Gabor Mate and
Mm,
his constituent Sataram.
mm,
And it was a painful year, very,
yeah,
very painful year, because good year, but it was just like you're going through all your little mini
yeah.
traumas, and you're going through a lot of therapy, and you're doing therapy for others.
Mm,
Uh, and I was telling Mark, I said, I was so restless during this time that the only thing I could do with any form of meditation was
mm,
I would do a walking meditation, and I
mhm.
would do your 5 4 3 2 1
Yeah,
while walking, because I needed to move.
yeah.
I couldn't sit in meditation. My thoughts would go to 500 different places, or I
Mm,
would completely fall asleep because my parasympathetic would just bring me to sleep right,
yeah.
right away. Even sitting, I would fall asleep. So, I mean, it was that level of exhaustion.
Mm.
Um, and he said, "Oh, did you notice some new things?" And I said, "Yes, I noticed this new tree right by the office." And I asked even my staff, "Has this tree been here?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's been here for like 20 years. You." I was like,
See,
"Oh,
all the things
oh,
we miss out on
Yeah.
by not
Yeah. It's
being
like you're
present.
changing your glasses. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden the fog is becoming less foggy and you have even a better peripheral vision.
Yeah.
And I notice now things I don't, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, I have a dog. So any dog owner will really understand this. Like every time you take your dog for a walk, the dog is like, oh my God, like we
It's a
walk.
party. Like, are you
It's like a
kidding me?
party and
Yeah.
it's like they haven't been on this walk before. They
Yeah.
will smell everything and
Yeah.
they would just kind of, try to explore the entire street again.
Yes, yes. Like to talk about like mindfulness beginner's mind, right? Like
Yeah,
what's here?
totally.
Like let's get curious. Imagine if we had like a
Yeah.
10% of that, all of
Yeah.
us, a little more.
And then and then Mark would be like, well, we can do that as
Yeah.
humans. We can be like, okay, what are the 5 things I haven't seen on the street? Like really in detail, what are the 5 things I haven't seen in the street? And I'd
Mhm.
be like, oh yeah, the crease on the on the
Yeah,
asphalt,
yeah.
the light up there, oh, this leaf, where you really, if you look at the elements even on your street that you've been on thousands of times,
Yeah.
there are things you have not seen on your street. So
Yes.
go out and walk on your street
Yes.
and say,
You,
what are the 5 things I have not seen on the street?
it's so funny you say this because as I started my journey in mindfulness in the early 2000s, and you know, I opened up to wait a minute. There's something that I'm doing in my life that's making my life worse. What? There's something about me that I can make better. Anyway, one of the things that surprised me when I started learning about mindfulness is I was at a traffic light, and there's a medium and concrete medium, and there was a little tiny little grass weed that's growing out of that
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah.
And it was like amazing. The fact that I noticed it, I kept looking at it like, this is incredible. How did this thing come out of the like I would have never noticed that,
No,
and then I
no.
realized, wow, there's so much wonder available all around us if
Yeah.
we actually begin to look around, if we begin to connect with our senses. John
Yeah.
Kabat-Zinn, the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, which I teach
Hmm.
through my center, and I have free sessions about it if anyone is interested.
Definitely. Right here.
Right. It's an amazing program. Speaks about coming to our senses. He has a book called Coming to Our Senses. Like we experience the world through the senses, but often we're lost in the narrative aspect in our mind.
Yeah.
Me, me,
Absolutely.
me, 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 what I'm doing, what I got to do. What didn't I do? I can't believe they did this. Like,
Yeah.
and the powerful thing is we don't have to shut down that part. We just have to activate the part that brings presence, our senses. And even research is showing that, which is fascinating. Um,
Oh, that's so beautiful.
the-
I never knew actually.
mm,
I got married about 20 years ago.
mm,
I don't actually even think my husband knew about mindfulness and
mm,
tapping into your senses. But you know how your wedding day just goes so fast,
mm,
right?
yeah.
Goes so fast. And you're like, where did the day go? Maybe we should go look at the video because I don't remember anything.
Yeah.
But what I do remember
Mm.
from my wedding is that he would tap my shoulder every hour on the hour and say to me, look around you.
Oh.
And I remember every moment he did that.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yes. And I was just telling a patient of mine who's getting married
Mm.
for her to do that with her and her partner.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, that's mindfulness.
That's mindfulness right there. Just look around. That could be something that listeners can take.
Yes.
Many things that you shared today, like maybe just look around today, whatever you're going. Could be grocery store, could be the bank, could be your kitchen. Just you don't have to even slow down.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is not about you have to be slow, but you have to be aware.
No.
So maybe look around. What a beautiful way to capture life. Look around.
Well, and then beyond that, when you get good at looking around,
Mm,
your connection with people will improve. Your curiosity will increase.
mm,
You will make conversation with the grocery person who's putting your
mm,
groceries in the bag. You will make conversation with the barista. you will learn something new about people that you see regularly that you really don't see.
Yeah.
So, uh, and I realized that it only has come to me since I've started the practice of mindfulness.
Mm.
And life is just so much richer,
Yeah.
and it's so nice. I
Mm.
feel like, and people are genuinely actually nice if you show them a genuine smile or a genuine
Yeah.
just comment, you
Yeah.
know? And people are just like, oh, wow, like she's not on her phone, or she's not
Yeah.
like doing four things at the same time while
Yeah.
she's doing groceries.
Well, trying to get to the next thing. That's how often we just gotta finish grocery so I can get home, so I
Yeah.
can prepare, so I can get to the next thing. And we're
Yeah.
always
Well,
chasing the next thing rather than be here.
and I don't know about you, Kasim, but women in general are
Mm.
super good at multitasking.
Mm.
Like we can be on the phone and do our dishes at the same time, and at the same time like do our bills, and like it's just to a point, it's such a whirlwind for us,
Mm.
because we need to be in so many different places at the same time that we miss out a lot.
Yeah.
And I've realized that tasking is truly a toxin for us.
Yeah.
So I deliberately, when I'm washing dishes, I only wash dishes.
Mm.
When I'm on the phone, I'm only on the phone.
Mm.
I mean, I still have a bit of ADD. So sometimes if I'm in a meeting and it's going very slow,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially the Zoom meeting, I will kind of check something, and
Yeah.
then I feel guilty that I'm checking
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, people,
Yes. I
I
mean, as a
still
human.
do a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But I actively try not to, because I can multitask.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing at a time. That's so mindfulness
Yeah.
enriched, really. It's
Yeah.
just one thing at a time. When doing bills, do bills. When doing emails, do emails. When being with a friend,
Yeah.
be with a friend.
Be
Yeah.
intentional with your
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
really intentional. So, people text you,
Mm.
uh, the initial sort of feeling is, oh, I need to text them right back, because
Yeah.
I'm going to forget, or they're going to think I'm not texting them. And I say, well, no, my text I will get to when it's time for me to
Yeah.
get back to my texts. And it's
See.
the pleaser in us a little bit, I think, too, that has to sort of tame a bit.
Mm. See, that's a pause right there. You pause from just reacting to saying, when is a good time for me to reply or respond?
Yeah.
So there's this of a just, let's hold on. There's an automatic we all have, even from a text. Wait.
Yeah.
There's just even it's a split second of wait. Just
Right?
wait. Do I need this right now? Rather than automatic,
Yeah.
autopilot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been so enjoyable, so enriching, and I
Same.
wonder, yes, and I wonder before we come to the end, and there's a sound of a bell even happening.
Oh, where did that come from? Yeah.
We couldn't have organized that even better, right? um, I wonder if you can share a little bit about one of the programs you have in ZilliCare. Is it called Revive, or
Yes.
can you share a little bit about that, and then maybe how people can find you?
Yeah, so we do have a program which is really geared towards understanding how you function as an individual, which sabotages the way you care for yourself. So, really getting to be a bit more self aware, knowing what your coping mechanisms are, what's serving you, what's not. And if you're struggling in any ways in your professional life or in your personal life,
Mm.
this is a 6-week program where you get access to a healthcare provider like myself. Most likely will be me at the moment, and you go through a program where you get an assessment in the beginning. Then
Mm.
you watch the weekly videos, and then you have your counseling sessions in between the videos. And
Mm.
what have we found? We've gone through this program now for probably hundreds of people,
Mm.
actually. And we're now doing studies to see how they're doing with their lifestyle measures, even a year after the program. And they're still doing great.
Wow.
So really the 6 week, we're not going to just let you go for after those 6 weeks. The 6 weeks is really giving you all the tools and insights and that self-awareness and understanding, what will serve you and what doesn't. And then you can check in, every 3 months or every 6 months just to see if it's kind of like, when you go to your personal trainer and you're like, I just need to get fit, I just need to get physically fit. Some people talk like that. And you're like, oh, okay. And then, the personal trainer sort of assesses you and they give you a program and they give you a 6-week program or a 12-week program. And then you're on your own, really having to go to the gym and do the work. And so this is more, what elements of care can you commit to? What small habits can you commit to? And what understanding about yourself can you commit to in order to make yourself a better version for not only for yourself, but for your community? So how do you care for yourself so you can care for your community? And you can find the Revive program at ZilliCare.com. So ZilliCare.com. And just go and find the services, and it's there, and you can book it all online.
I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
And other ways for folks to find you? Are you on social media, just so we can put
I am.
that in the show notes?
I'm on ZilliCare on Instagram and Facebook. I've kind of slowed down on the X / old Twitter. It's not my platform, really. And so it's mostly ZilliCare. So ZilliCare at Instagram and Facebook for now. And then really looking forward to collaborating with people like yourself in order to just bring the messages out that people need to hear. So you will find me in all places.
Well, I'll put all these in the show notes as well. And I'm wondering, any final thoughts before we come to an end? And again, really enjoyed all of this. So any final thoughts for listeners or viewers?
Well, I wanted to first of all thank you because the work that you're doing, especially the mindfulness piece, the laughter yoga, the podcast, I think if anything, you're bringing together our community and community of health and well-being. And to me, that element of social connection is, again, another engagement of my soul. So you just made my day for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Truly.
It was excellent. Thank you.
I really appreciate you and appreciate, as I said when we began, the shooting star that keeps shining. So that's what you are. Truly. Thank you for your work. And I look forward to collaborating, continuing conversation as well.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you. And also thank all the listeners for watching and listening. May our moments be filled with ease, and may you be present in as many of them. Thank you.